6 children knelt in the dirt, their foreheads nearly touching the scorched earth. They weren't praying for miracles, only for the end to come quietly. The smallest boy, barely 5, clutched a charred strip of fabric that once resembled a doll. The girl next to him, barefoot, eyes hollow from hunger, tightened her arms around the others. Her name was Mercy, though the world hadn't shown her any. They had been running for days, from men with badges that didn't mean justice, from fire, from the last breath of their father. They had no more strength, no more tears, only whispers, faint prayers to a sky that had long forgotten their names. And yet, the wind carried their whispers beyond the brittle trees and over the rocky rise where a lone figure moved silently. Her boots cracked dried thorns. Her rifle was slung across her back. Her name was Clara Hawthorne, a widow who had spoken to no living soul in 3 winters. She had been tracking a wounded coyote through the canyons more out of instinct than need. Living on that dusty land, you either hunted or remembered. And Clara had done enough remembering to last a lifetime. At first, she thought the sound was the wind again, whispers threading through the mesquite and sagebrush like ghosts. But then she heard it, the soft sob of a child. She froze, heart pounding against ribs that had forgotten what it meant to care. Slowly she followed the sound until she reached the ruins of an old cabin. What she saw behind the broken timbers made her breath catch in her throat. 6 children, huddled together in ashes, famine written into every angle of their bones. She should have turned away. She almost did. But then the oldest girl lifted her head, eyes like gunmetal, not from defiance, but from memory. Eyes that had seen too much. And for the first time in 3 years, Clara felt her knees weaken not from age, but from something far more dangerous: hope. 3 years before she heard the whispers in the canyon wind, Clara Hawthorne had buried a pine box beneath the frozen ground behind her ranch. Inside it lay her only child, Daniel, just 8 years old. And beside him, her husband, Jonah. The doctor said it was smallpox. Fast-moving, merciless. It swept through their town like wildfire, and within a week, Clara had lost the only 2 people who ever spoke her name. With love. After the second funeral, no one came to check on her. The town itself shrank to almost nothing. Those who survived fled north. Others died in their beds. But Clara stayed, not because she was brave, because she was too tired to run. She sealed the doors of her home, took in the animals left behind, and let the seasons pass like ghosts across her porch. The laughter that once filled her kitchen faded into memory. The smell of Jonah's pipe smoke lingered for a year, then vanished. She stopped counting days. Time became something measured only by weather and the quiet. Every morning, she'd walk the same perimeter of her land, half a mile across hard red soil, past the willow tree where her son used to hang a swing. She never touched the swing again. Not even when the rope finally snapped in the wind and the wooden seat landed with a hollow thud. People began calling her the ghost widow of Dry Hollow. She heard it once whispered by a pair of cowboys passing through the trading post. She didn't flinch. They weren't wrong. She hadn't spoken aloud in almost a year, but she could still shoot, still track, still feel the pull of instincts honed by grief and survival. Hunting became her language. It gave her a reason to breathe. So when she first heard the whisper of children through the wind, she mistook it for memory. Her son used to whisper prayers before bed, thinking she didn't hear him. But when the whisper came again, fragile like it might disappear, if she turned her head, something inside her stirred. She could have walked away. But the truth was, she'd been waiting for a reason not to. So she stepped toward the ruined cabin rifle, slung low boots crunching on ash. And for the first time in 3 long years, Clara Hawthorne spoke. Just 3 words. Soft, hoarse, but unmistakably alive. "I see you, child." Clara hadn't meant to get close. But once the wind shifted, carrying with it the sour smell of old smoke and rot, she knew something had gone terribly wrong. The cabin where the children hid wasn't abandoned by time it had been taken by fire, and recently. She crouched low, one hand resting on the stock of her rifle, as she watched from behind a split beam. The children hadn't noticed her yet. Their movements were slow, hollow. The oldest, Mercy, the girl with eyes like burnt steel, was trying to keep them from collapsing. One boy, no more than 6, was shivering violently despite the heat. Another clutched her skirt like a lifeline. Clara stepped forward. Mercy spotted her instantly. Her body jerked like a wild deer about to bolt. She rose, weak legs trembling, but planted firm between Clara and the rest. Her thin arms extended like a human shield, jaw clenched. Voice cracked. "Don't come closer," she rasped. Clara froze, hands open, palms up. She said nothing. Mercy's stare didn't blink. These children had seen too much to believe in kindness, and Clara didn't blame them. Then, just as Mercy's mouth parted to speak again, the air shifted. A dull thud, thud, thud rolled in from the valley below. At first, soft, almost like distant thunder. But Clara knew the sound well. Hoofbeats. She turned toward the open slope and saw dust kicking up beyond the ridgeline. Riders. At least 3. Maybe more. Coming fast. Mercy heard it too. She spun toward the sound, her face twisting into something more than fear recognition. "No," she whispered. "They found us." Clara moved without thinking. Her voice cracked through the tension like a whip. "Inside. Now." Mercy didn't move. The younger kids looked to her. She hesitated only a moment, then pulled them all behind the wreckage of the collapsed hearth. Clara stepped toward the outer edge of the clearing, rifle drawn. She knelt low beneath a scorched window frame and watched the slope. The riders crested the hill. 3 men, all in dust-covered coats, their horses lathered and restless. One wore a badge on a crooked vest, tilted so far to one side it might have been a joke if not for the rifles slung across their backs. Clara's gut turned cold. She'd seen men like this before. Lawless men hiding behind fake law. She'd buried enough of their kind to know. They dismounted and spread out casually like men who'd done this before. Not in a rush, confident, dangerous. "Little rats ran farther than I thought," one of them muttered. Another chuckled. "They always run. Makes the catching more fun." Clara felt her grip tighten on the rifle. Her finger hovered just shy of the trigger. Then she heard it behind her, a stifled cry. She turned. One of the children had fallen. The fevered boy. Mercy was trying to lift him, but her arms were shaking too badly. Clara rushed in, knelt beside them. "Let me," she whispered, lifting the boy carefully. Mercy pulled back. "We don't need your help." But her voice betrayed her. It was fraying, desperate. The boy whimpered, his tiny fingers curling around Clara's scarf. "They'll kill him," Mercy whispered. "They'll kill all of us." Clara looked down at the boy's flushed face, sunken too. Warm lips cracked. He was dying. They all were. And then Mercy pulled something from beneath her dress. A crumpled piece of parchment folded a dozen times and barely legible. It was part of a map. "My father died for this," she said, eyes locked onto Clara's. "They think it leads to silver, but it doesn't. I burned most of it. This is all I have left." That was why they were being hunted. Not because they stole, not because they broke any law, but because greed never needed a reason. The voices outside grew louder. Footsteps on dry ground. Laughter. Clara looked at Mercy, at the boy in her arms, at the 4 other children hiding behind a broken wall, eyes wide with terror. She'd spent 3 years building walls around her grief. And now, because of a torn piece of paper and a girl with the same fire her son once carried, those walls were falling. "I can take you somewhere safe," she said. Mercy stared. Why? Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. Because once I had someone who trusted me to protect him. And I failed. The parchment trembled in Mercy's hands as she unfolded it with care only grief could teach. The ink had faded in spots smudged by rain and fingers too small to carry a legacy. It was no bigger than her palm, and much of it had been torn away. What remained showed a crooked mountain range, a river, and an X drawn in red charcoal. Clara didn't need to be told what it was. Her late husband, Jonah, had once surveyed land for the railroad. He used to say men will kill for what they can't even see, as long as someone tells them there's silver beneath it. That red X might have once meant hope to someone. But now it had only brought death. Mercy stared down at it, her voice flat. They think it's a treasure map. It's not. It's just a land deed my father drew for our claim. There's no treasure, just rocks and grief. Clara nodded slowly. Then why carry it? Mercy didn't answer at first. She traced one of the drawn rivers with her fingertip, then folded the paper again with shaking hands. Because it's the last thing I have that he touched. Outside, one of the men called out again. Mercy, we know you're in there, girl. That widow with you ain't gonna stop nothing. You're surrounded. Clara moved quickly, her voice low but firm. There's a crawl space under the cabin. Go now. Take the little ones. Mercy didn't move. They'll kill you. Clara's gaze didn't flinch. They'll kill all of us if we stay like this. Mercy hesitated, then obeyed, helping the children slip one by one into the crawl space. The last to go was the fevered boy. Clara knelt beside him, pressing her hand to his forehead. It was burning up. We need to get him water and shade, Clara muttered. He won't last another hour. We won't last another 5 minutes, Mercy whispered. Those men, they've done worse before. Clara's eyes narrowed. You know them. Mercy nodded, lips pressed tight. The one with the badge, his name's Cal Ramsey. He rode with the men who came to our camp the night my father died. Said they were offering protection. Mama didn't believe him. She said no. Clara's stomach twisted. What happened? They came back 2 days later, when Papa wasn't home. Mama, she fought. They strung her up in front of us. The girl's voice broke, but her eyes did not. My little brother thought she was flying. He was only 4. Clara felt something shift inside her, an old wound cracking wide again. She remembered Daniel's voice the night he died, his small hand gripping hers, asking if heaven would be quiet. She'd failed to protect him from disease. She wouldn't fail again. Mercy continued, her voice quieter now, as if she were reciting a confession to a priest. They only left because Papa came back early. He shot 2 of them, got shot himself. But before he died, he gave me this. She held up the folded paper and told me to run, to protect the others. Said it was all that mattered now. And you've been running ever since. Mercy nodded. We hid in caves, followed riverbeds, begged for scraps when we dared show our faces. Every time I thought we lost them, they'd show up again. Always closer, always grinning. Clara's jaw clenched. And no one helped you. Mercy's laugh was short and bitter. Some tried. They're dead now. A thud against the cabin wall made them both jump. A boot. Then another. They're closing in, Clara whispered. They won't wait much longer. Mercy looked up at her, fear and fury tangled in her expression. Why are you helping us, really? It was a fair question. Clara didn't owe them anything. She hadn't spoken to another soul in 3 years. And yet here she was, kneeling in ash beside children with death on their heels. Clara took a breath, looked the girl straight in the eye. Because I buried my son in the cold ground behind my home and spent 3 years wishing I had died with him. And for the first time since I found someone I want to live for a moment, Mercy said nothing. Then she reached into her satchel and handed Clara the parchment. Take it. Clara frowned. Why? Because they'll follow the paper, not me. If you run north with it, they'll chase you. I'll take the kids west. We'll meet you in 2 days near the ridge." Clara stared at the girl, stunned. This was more than courage. It was sacrifice. "No," she said firmly. "You're still a child." Mercy looked up, eyes blazing. "Not anymore." Before Clara could argue further, a voice outside bellowed sharp and close. "Last chance, girl. Come out now, or we torch the rest of that cabin. Children be damned." Mercy turned toward the crawlspace again. "They'll kill us anyway. At least let me die fighting." Clara grabbed her shoulder gently. "Not today." The silence shattered. A window pane exploded inward as the butt of a rifle smashed through it, scattering glass across the floor. Clara didn't hesitate. She fired. The shot cracked through the scorched cabin like thunder, catching the man outside in the shoulder. He screamed and stumbled back, crashing into the outer wall. "Go!" Clara shouted, pushing Mercy toward the crawlspace. "Get them out the back. Now!" Mercy moved fast, shepherding the younger children through the narrow opening beneath the cabin. But the fevered boy was still limp in Clara's arms, too weak to crawl. She had no choice. She laid him down behind a collapsed beam out of sight and stood up to face the door. It burst open before she could reload. A tall man with a jagged scar across his cheek stepped inside, his pistol already drawn. Clara ducked just as he fired. The bullet tore through the wooden post beside her, sending splinters into her arm. She screamed through her teeth and rolled behind the old kitchen counter. The man stalked forward, boots crunching over debris. "You think you can hide them, widow?" he growled. "We've done this dance before." Clara didn't respond. She knew his voice. Cal Ramsey, one of the names Mercy had whispered, the kind of man who never earned the badge he wore. She reached into her boot and pulled the small pistol she kept hidden there, a last resort. The room pulsed with tension. Smoke from the earlier gunfire thickened the air. Suddenly, another gunman appeared at the side window. Clara turned too late. His shot rang out, and a searing pain tore through her left side. She collapsed behind the counter, clutching her ribs, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Ramsey stepped closer, his revolver now inches from her temple. But then a shout. "Boss." "They're running toward the trees, Mercy." Clara used the moment of distraction. She swung her boot into Ramsey's shin with all the strength she had, left knocking him off balance. He cursed and fired, but the shot went wide. Clara fired from the floor, her bullet grazing his thigh. He screamed again, limping back toward the door. She crawled, dragging herself across the floor toward the wounded boy, still hidden behind the beam. Blood soaked her shirt. Her vision blurred. From outside, gunfire rang out twice. Then a scream. Mercy's. Clara's heart stilled. She forced herself upright, pressing one bloodied hand against the wall to steady herself. She staggered to the door and peered out. Mercy was crouched beside the youngest girl, shielding her body with her own. One of the gunmen stood over them, his rifle trained low. But his hands were shaking. "You don't gotta die, girl," he said. "Just hand over the paper. That's all." Mercy didn't move. Her chin lifted proud, even in the dirt. "I burned it." The man's eyes went wide with fury. He raised his rifle. Clara screamed. No. She fired. The shot struck him in the side of the neck. He dropped instantly, blood pouring into the dust. Mercy turned slowly, her expression blank, like someone who had just witnessed the end of something she didn't yet understand. Clara stumbled toward her. "Is she hurt?" she asked, nodding to the little girl. Mercy shook her head, still frozen. But then a small choked cry rang out behind them. The fevered boy. Clara spun around and saw him crawling, barely conscious, leaving behind a dark red trail. He'd been hit. She rushed to him, fell to her knees, and turned him over. The bullet had grazed his shoulder, but the blood loss was heavy. Too much for a child his size. "No, no, no," Clara whispered, pressing her hand against the wound. "Stay with me." Mercy arrived beside her. "He's breathing," she said, trying to be calm, but her lips trembled. "He needs help," Clara said, eyes frantic. "Real help. Doctor, help. Mercy looked around. There's no one. Nowhere to go. That was when the second twist of fate arrived. The thunder of hooves returned, but louder this time. Not 3 men. Not riders in the dark. A dozen. But these weren't Ramsey's gang. They wore real badges glinting under the afternoon sun. Real lawmen. Clara saw the lead rider's star from 50 feet away and nearly collapsed in relief. The cabin behind them was in ruins. Blood in the dust. 1 child wounded. Clara herself bleeding from 2 places. And more riders still on their way. She didn't know if they were in time, but she knew she'd held the line long enough for someone else to take over. She whispered, "Stay awake, sweetheart. Help's here." And for the first time in 3 years, someone answered her prayer. The lawmen had come, but not all at once. They rode in fast, scattering Ramsey's men like leaves on the wind. A few fell to their knees the moment they saw real badges. Others ran only to be cut off or brought down in a flurry of gunfire. Clara collapsed near the porch, blood soaking through her shirt and darkening the dirt beneath her. A medic dismounted and rushed to her side, barking orders to one of the deputies. But Clara waved him off weakly. "Not me," she rasped. "The boy. Inside." The medic nodded and vanished into the wreckage, calling for bandages and water. Clara tried to sit up, but her strength failed her. Mercy knelt beside her, gripping her hand with both of hers. "You're bleeding too much," the girl whispered, voice cracking. "Please don't die. Not now." Clara smiled faintly. "Can't die yet. I still haven't made you sweep a floor." Mercy choked out a breathless laugh through her tears. But the moment didn't last. One of the deputies shouted, "They're regrouping down the south ridge, 24 more." A ripple of dread passed through the lawmen. The gang wasn't just a pack of drifters. They were a network bandits, bounty jumpers, and fake marshals working together across territories. And now they were coming to reclaim what they thought was theirs. Marshal Evelyn Hayes, a weathered woman in a brown duster and real silver star, dismounted and made her way to Clara. Her face was familiar. "Clara Hawthorne," she asked, kneeling. "You probably don't remember me. I rode with Jonah back when he was training frontier medics." Clara blinked in disbelief. "Evie." Hayes nodded. "When I heard rumors about 6 kids running from a badge gang near Dry Hollow, I knew you'd be the only one crazy enough to step in." Clara tried to sit up again, but her ribs screamed. "I'm not crazy. Just tired of burying the innocent." The marshal's face softened. "Then let us handle it now. We've got men, ammunition. We'll protect them." Clara's eyes drifted toward the boy inside, who now had color returning to his cheeks under the medic's care. She looked at Mercy, mud-streaked, trembling, but still fierce. And then she heard it. The low rumble of hooves again. "Dozens of them." "They'll overwhelm you," Clara whispered. Hayes shook her head. "We're not leaving." Clara gritted her teeth. "I wasn't asking you to." She motioned weakly to Mercy. "Get them to the caves. 1/2 mile north. They'll fit through where grown men can't. Take the boy. Carry him if you have to." Mercy's brow furrowed. "What about you?" "I'll slow them down." "No." The word snapped from Mercy's throat like a whip. "We don't leave people behind. That's not who we are." Clara looked her in the eye. "It is who I am. Not because I gave up on life, but because I finally found something worth dying for." A pause. Then she added softer, "And because once I ran from grief, I won't run again." Mercy sobbed as she leaned in forehead to forehead. "I'll come back for you," she whispered. Clara smiled, tears slipping into the lines of her face. "No need. I'll be right here." The lawmen formed a line as the sound of riders swelled closer, angrier. Guns loaded, words few. Clara rose with help from Hayes, took her place at the center, blood still dripping but eyes clear. The rifle in her hands shook only slightly. Behind her, the children slipped into the brush and vanished into the rocks. Mercy turned only once to look back. Clara gave her a nod, the last one she'd ever give. Then the bandits charged. The air lit up with smoke and fire. Clara fired until her rifle clicked dry, then pulled her revolver. She dropped one rider, then another. Hayes fought beside her like a woman reclaiming her oath. And when the final wave broke through the line, Clara stood firm in the ashes of a burned cabin where hope had once been lost. Her body would fall there before the sun did. But her spirit had already crossed into something larger, something called family. 3 months later, the sun rose over Dry Hollow, soft and golden brushing light across the fence line of a ranch that had once been silent for years. Now it echoed with something unexpected. Laughter, not loud or wild, just the steady, bubbling sound of children, too young to know how much healing they'd begun. The small house that Clara Hawthorne had once locked herself inside now had windows open, curtains fluttering, and the smell of fresh bread floating out the door. Boots lined the porch. A jump rope lay forgotten in the dirt. And under the old willow tree where no one had walked since Daniel died, someone had hung a new swing. It creaked gently in the morning breeze. Inside, Mercy stirred a pot of stew while keeping one eye on the youngest two who were chasing each other with wooden spoons. The wounded boy, now mostly healed, sat by the window carving a horse from a block of pine. His fingers steady, his brow focused. He had taken to calling the mare outside Clara. Said she was stubborn fast and always showed up when you needed her most. Every night before dinner, they prayed. But the words had changed. No longer desperate. Now they prayed with full bellies and soft blankets. They prayed with thanks for second chances. For the woman who had given them not just shelter, but something far rarer, a future. Mercy still slept with one hand curled under her satchel. She wasn't ready to let go of her past entirely. But she was learning how to live in a world where not every knock on the door meant danger. Where not every adult wanted something in return. Where love, real love, chose you. Sometimes at dusk, she'd step outside and sit beneath the willow tree, tracing the grain of the swing rope with her fingertips. She'd look west toward the mountains and whisper into the wind, "Thank you." And somewhere, whether in heaven or just the old memory of a burned cabin and a brave woman with nothing left to lose, Clara Hawthorne would smile, because her story didn't end with grief. It ended with 6 children, safe, strong, and still learning how to laugh. And with a single truth etched into the soil of the frontier: sometimes the strongest people are the ones who've already lost everything. But choose to love anyway. If this story touched your heart, maybe it's because you believe what Clara did, that healing is messy, costly, and worth every scar. Subscribe for more Wild West stories like this one. The next might just help you believe in something again.